Someone asked me to rank all of the FNAF endings from worst to best. I said I would do a tier list. They wanted me to do a worst to best. I said it was my channel, so I can do whatever I want. And now I have caved. Today I will be ranking every single FNAF ending from worst to best. What technically counts as an ending is up for debate, but I will be ranking every single ending that was in the Breaking Down Endings video, and every ending of Security Breach. If you haven't watched that video, which you probably have, because it's my biggest by far, you can check that out too for a simple objective analysis of these endings. This ranking will simply be based on my enjoyment of the ending. It could be based on lore, presentation, impact, emotion, entertainment, anything. So keep in mind this is just my opinion. To make it crystal clear, I'm only including FNAF 1 to 9, so don't expect every ending of FNAF World or some shit like that. This list will be ranked from worst to best and will contain 35 different endings, so let's get into this before this lasts forever. Considering I made a video called Why Security Breach Ruins FNAF and called this ending the worst moments in FNAF history, it probably isn't surprising that I'm not the biggest fan of the Burn Trap ending. Sure, it looks nice, and I guess it could give off a bit of nostalgia, but I absolutely despise what this ending stands for. It completely undoes what FNAF 6's ending did, and by referencing the classic characters, it even damaged the Happiest Day to an extent. I just wanted Security Breach to branch out away from the original series more, and this just sort of cemented to me that FNAF desperately needs to end. I already knew I wanted it to end after Ultimate Custom Night, but this is what fully proved to me that this series needs to die already. This might be a bit of an unfair pick, but I don't even care. The ending of Security Breach, where Gregory drives a goddamn car and saves Freddy with the battery of said car, is so unbelievably stupid that I hate it. I know I'm a bit of a joyless wench, so it's simply harder for me to be entertained by stuff like this, but this ending is just another example of Security Breach being too goofy. If this was animated, I could at least say it looks somewhat cool, but this is the worst ending with the comic style, and the content is so cartoonishly dumb. There's nothing interesting about this ending, there's nothing entertaining about this ending, there's nothing satisfying about this ending. The only thing it has going for it is that it didn't single-handedly ruin the storyline like the Burn Trap ending. I'd assume this isn't that surprising. FNAF 2's Notice of Termination ending is as simple as it gets, so it's bound to be low. It's a pink slip with words. You could argue it has some significance because it has a name on it, but that has become so irrelevant that I don't even take it into account anymore. This ending didn't try to be anything big, so I won't shit on it, but it's obviously going to be low on this list. The reason I decided to put the first FNAF 2 ending with the check above the Notice of Termination is simply that it's a little more memorable and a little more satisfying. It's the first reward you get, it's the ending of the campaign as opposed to a bonus, so it's a little more special in a way, but it's just as simple, so we'll just move on. FNAF 1's Notice of Termination is exactly the same as FNAF 2's. I just put it a little bit higher because it's more iconic since it's the first game, but it still isn't anything special. And like I just said with the Notice of Termination, there's nothing special about FNAF 1's basic ending, but it's a little more iconic, so I'll give it the slightest amount of extra credit. This is the last of the boring ones. FNAF 4's overtime is essentially the same as the original check. I just thought it was a little bit funny because of how small the overtime pay was. That's a decent little chuckle. Next! The bad ending of Pizzeria Simulator is slightly amusing because of how anticlimactic it is, but it's nothing special. It's about on par with all the checks we just talked about, but this one does have voice acting and features the slightest amount of content, relatively speaking. Fuck this ending. How fucking dare you try to hand me something emotional and pretty after butchering this series with your existence? Go fuck yourself. I actually don't dislike the Golden Freddy cutscene in Ultimate Custom Night. It's fairly thought-provoking and can contribute to quite a few theories, but there's very little to it. It's just Golden Freddy in a black void. I like the return to FNAF 1's Golden Freddy. You don't see that very often. I can appreciate the subtle piano music, but there's really not a whole lot to this ending, so it really just can't be that high. FNAF 2's overtime is almost as simplistic as FNAF 1's and the other checks, but it features this newspaper that I think makes it a bit better. I just appreciate the way it gives us a little bit of information without being too frustrating. It isn't hard to figure out or anything, but it also doesn't overload the information for no reason. It's a simple ending that isn't boring like the checks, and it doesn't make me mad like Security Breach's Princess Quest, so it's not that low, but obviously there's very little to it. I want to give this ending more credit, but I just can't really because of how frustrating it is and how much I really find it dumb. I will give credit where credit is due. The animation at the beginning of the disassembled ending of Security Breach is insanely good. As I've said, the heads of Steel Wool used to work at Pixar, so it shouldn't blow me away that the animations are good, but with the shocking lack of animations in this game, I can really appreciate this. Vanny's movements are really fluid, Glamrock Freddy looks great and ready to rumble, the animated part is just a solid cutscene all around. This ending is just also decent relative to the ones we've talked about because it contains some actual content and presents itself well, whereas a lot of the endings I've mentioned thus far are simply an image on screen that doesn't feel very rewarding. However, the superstar line is just so tone-deaf, and this scene seems to want to be dramatic, but it really isn't. This isn't the death of Charlotte Emily or Elizabeth Afton, it's Freddy powering down because he got ripped apart. There's nothing emotional about this scene, but it also isn't funny, so I can't tell what the tone of this is meant to be. Glamrock Freddy's final line doesn't make me sad, nor does it make me laugh, nor does it make me feel anything else. What is this ending supposed to be? The animated part of this one is good, and it's generally less uninteresting than the others I've gone over, but it's still a little bit on the goofy side, and doesn't really intrigue me at all, except for its animation part, which gets cut off very early. The bad ending of Security Breach is actually one of the better ones of this game. It's not the most interesting, but it doesn't feature anything that makes me want to die. This gives us a little more information on Gregory, that information being that he's fucking homeless. It also tells us that there's been a series of disappearances, which is some nice context, I suppose. The final shot of Vanny's shadow is also pretty chilling relative to the rest of the game. This is a bit of a boring ending, but it's not a bad one, and it doesn't make me angry by existing. It's kind of just okay. I want to hate the Security Breach Unmasked ending because it's so anticlimactic, but it isn't that bad. I'm pretty sure Vanessa being Vanny wasn't actually meant to be surprising or dramatic, but it doesn't really matter why they did this because it's still fairly boring. The reason I ranked it higher is because it does have a bit of a narrative. The Pizzaplex burns down, which is somewhat predictable, but I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. Freddy sacrifices himself for Gregory, and I think that's a great way to end it. Once again, the removing of Vanny's mask is what makes it a little more dumb, but I guess Vanny is lying there, so it kind of makes sense that Gregory is like, hey, I wonder who they are. And then the Vanny being in the burning building, or on top of the burning building at the end, is kind of just... It's frustrating, and I think it's kind of stupid that they included that in there, but it's whatever. This ending is a little more on the interesting side, and once again, I think the moment where Freddy sacrifices himself is a pretty nice one. But overall, I think this ending is just, once again, like the disassembled one, a bit boring. Not necessarily as goofy, though, and I don't necessarily hate it. I don't think Help Wanted's Trapped ending is bad. It's definitely thought-provoking, it's just very simple, despite maybe not seeming that way. You do have the creepy shot of Glitch Trap and the creepy details of the door, but this ending doesn't really feel like anything. You are literally trapped behind a door with unsettling handprints and a giant bunny man on the other side of the door, but it doesn't really feel like anything is actually happening. I am now behind a door. I haven't really lost to Glitch Trap because he isn't attacking me, nor am I dead, but I also don't get any sort of congratulations because I didn't win. It feels like a bit of a nothing ending, but it at the very least is interesting to talk about for a good minute. I don't know, I think it's a little bit on the scarier end. I think it's somewhat interesting, but again, just a bit too boring. I find the merge ending in Help Wanted a little bit better than the trapped one because I find it more unsettling. Being trapped behind the door, once again, doesn't really feel like much of a loss, even. But seeing through the eyes of Glitch Trap and being able to look down at your hands and see what you've become is a pretty creepy moment. It's executed pretty well, and I'm really glad Steelwool didn't just restart the game as soon as you lost. They went through the effort of giving this disturbing moment of losing to and then becoming the enemy. So it's a pretty decent ending. I kind of want to rank this one lower since Security Breach butchered Vanny a little bit, but the mask ending of Help Wanted's DLC is a really solid introduction to the future character. It takes a lot to get that reward. The mask is a fascinating sneak peek at the character, and the Easter egg that you get when holding the plush with the mask on is pretty great. You can't really count this Easter egg as a part of the ending, but the ending is at least the reason that the Easter egg is possible. There's nothing crazy about this ending, and it doesn't blow me away, but it's a good way to introduce a new character, and once again, the Easter egg that it leads to is one of the best in the series in recent years. So yeah, the mask ending of Curse of Dreadbear from Help Wanted is pretty decent. The Princess Quest ending of Help Wanted's mobile port is actually a fairly decent one. It's very short and simplistic, but I somewhat appreciate the secrecy and presentation. The pixelated glitch trap says some unidentifiable nonsense, and that has been decoded to say, "I always come back, let me out," which isn't the most thought-provoking dialogue, but it's a pretty cool little secret. This is also meant to resemble Glitchtrap and Vanessa, or so I'm told, I don't really know, and that's a pretty good representation if that's the case. It's nothing special, but it has a decent little secret, and it's a pretty well done presentation of the plot of this game. Pizzeria Simulator is a game with so many funny moments, and the bankruptcy ending is only one of them. It's on the lower end of funny endings, but I still get a kick out of it. This ending literally just consists of Andy Field letting you know that you fucked up and lost your money. You are now broke and you must leave. There's really nothing else to this ending, but Andy Field's delivery can make anything funny. The blacklisted ending in Pizzeria Simulator is yet another funny ending. In order to get this ending, you must finish the game with a liability risk of 50 or more, which if you've played Pizzeria Simulator, you know is quite a lot of danger. This ending consists of good old Andy Field saying that you're dangerous and a major risk, and you need to leave immediately. You're basically just described as a criminal as the game ends. Once again, Andy Field can make anything funny. The mediocre ending is another amazing, funny ending of Pizzeria Simulator. This one is achieved by doing absolutely nothing all the way until the end of the game. You don't buy anything, don't salvage the animatronics, you do nothing until the game is actually over. The ending of this one consists of calling you lazy and just basically saying you're a lazy jackass. And I love that. There's even artwork of the figure that represents you just kicking his feet up and relaxing. There's not a whole lot to say about the comedic Pizzeria Simulator endings, but they are absolutely hilarious to me, and I quite enjoy them. Basically anything with Andy Field is great. The newspaper ending after Night 6 of FNAF 3 isn't as mind-blowing as it once was, but I do think it still holds up as a really cool ending. In order to get the secret of this screen, you need to brighten the image, and that's where you can see Springtrap in the little picture on the newspaper. I personally just think this is a really good way of revealing that Springtrap didn't die when Fazbear Frights burnt down. It's technically explicit in how it tells you the truth, but it also hides itself in a way that was mostly not common when the game came out. There were some cool teasers that you had to brighten, but making the player or viewer have to brighten this screen themselves was a way bigger deal than it is now. This doesn't feature the most content, and its secret may not be as big as it once was, but I still quite enjoy the presentation of this ending. If I'm being honest, I don't particularly love the real ending of Sister Location, but it does have to be higher because of how much content it features and how much of a narrative it does provide. In this ending we learn quite a bit and witness quite a bit. We hear Baby lure us into the scooping room and witness our insides being ripped out, and the game ends with the protagonist's eyes glowing purple to tell us that something crazy has happened. It's actually pretty disturbing, and I think its timing works really well. The suspense that builds up until the scooper attacks you causes the initial impact to be pretty jarring, and the realization in the moment is definitely unsettling. I also think Baby's dialogue is pretty decent. I don't like how much she sounds like a cam girl, but some of her dialogue is at least a little bit more eerie. This ending is pretty solid. I don't love it because I don't think it's perfect or super interesting, but it's a pretty good one with a pretty solid conclusion to this game. The fake ending of Sister Location isn't amazing necessarily, but something about it is really exciting to me. It's really just a scene of Ennard limping his way towards you, and something about that is really creepy to me. The TV static causes the room to be filled with white noise, and the sound of Ennard's movements is pretty startling, and seeing him appear next to you is really off-putting. Ennard, although his body is a bit too gross, is one of my favorite character designs as far as being disturbing and intriguing, and this shot of him is a fantastic one. There's not enough content in this ending for it to rank any higher than this, but I really enjoy the unsettling and interesting moment of this ending. FNAF 3's bad ending is really simple, but I actually like it for some reason. It could never compare to the good ending, hence the fact that we haven't spoken about it yet, but I find the presentation of this ending interesting. I really like that it says bad ending, because it catches you so off guard. You just played through the game, not knowing that there are secrets you need to access or tasks you should be doing, but when you finish the game, you get this slap in the face. Straight up telling you that this is the bad ending is just a really interesting way to do it. This also features the happiest day theme that I love so much. It's better in the Happiest Day minigame, and I'm not saying it makes this ending that much better, but it's a really soft and sad sounding song that works great for the realization that this is the bad ending. The lights in the eyes and the fifth head being harder to see in the back is also just an intriguing way of representing what's going on. People likely didn't think of this straight away when the game first came out. The lights show that the animatronics are still active, and their souls have not been put to rest. Stuff like this isn't as shocking anymore because it's been so many years, but you have to understand just how cool stuff like this was in 2015. It's such a sad and well done way to piece this ending together, and I honestly really do like it. Whether or not this counts as an ending is up for debate, but since UCN doesn't have an official ending, and this somewhat gives off parting words, I'm still going to count this as an ending. I think the Old Man Consequences minigame from Ultimate Custom Night is pretty cool. I appreciate the secrecy of it, it's just very FNAF. You have to play the game with Old Man Consequences at level 1, and when you catch the fish, you're trapped in this glitchy world that's taken from FNAF World. Old Man Consequences says, "Leave the demons to his demons, rest your own soul, there is nothing left." People think this is Old Man Consequences speaking to Golden Freddy, and you can't really confirm it either way, but that seems the most likely, especially since the only other time we've talked about UCN in this video was the Golden Freddy cutscene. Someone also fucked around with the audio of this cutscene and got it to actually make sense. It's pretty dark and disturbing, and I think it's really cool. This is a solid secret, and it's pretty thought-provoking, but there's not a whole lot of content to it, so I can't rank it that high. Speaking of endings with very little content, people are going to be quite unhappy with this decision. I simply cannot dislike the FNAF 4 box. I think its mystery makes for such a good ending, and it's one of the most bizarre and random elements of this entire series, and that makes it so fun to talk about. I don't think it matters if the elements of the box have changed, or if it's a bit of a stupid addition to a game with a narrative. I just think it's interesting. Some people think Scott never had any plans for the box, and this was him adding stuff for no reason, but I fundamentally disagree. Maybe it's something underwhelming, and it's possible that the clues were so sparse that they were borderline useless, but Scott definitely had an idea for the box. We're confused by it, but on paper, it's just a box that contains something. Scott definitely thought of something to put in the fucking box. I made a whole video about theories on the box, and it's one of my favorite videos because you can tell I actually enjoy talking about it. I know people aren't going to like that the FNAF 4 box is in the top 10 best FNAF endings, but I don't care. It's an abstract, obnoxious bitch of an ending, but I have a weird soft spot for it. This ending may not contain a lot of content, but the Lorekeeper ending in Pizzeria Simulator is a really satisfying ending. The final screen is the famous gravestone image where we learn all of the names of the missing kids. Well, most of them. The graves are perfectly aligned with the masks in FNAF 3's ending, and that was such a nice little detail. We learn that Freddy's name was Gabriel, Foxy's name was Fritz, Chica's name was Susie, and Bonnie's name was Jeremy. One of them definitely says either Charlotte or Charlie for the puppet, and the other hidden one is likely Cassidy, but it could theoretically be Evan or whatever the crying child's name is. Once again, this ending is very plain and simple, but it's just such a nice sight to see, and it's great for the end of this game. To get here, you have to go through so many other brilliant Easter eggs, and this conclusion, tying back to the very original beginning of this story from FNAF 1 to 3, is a very wonderful thing. I'm not sure if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but the Bite of 83 ending, although I have problems with it, is a pretty great ending and cutscene. Like the moment in the scooping room, I think the suspense that builds while the crying child is in the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic makes the actual bite really shocking. Just look at Markiplier Flinch. Gonna have to change his name to Mark Flinchback. The general tone of this cutscene, with the weird ambiance and the dialogue, is why I still think FNAF 4 has some of the most consistently disturbing minigames. The overall feeling this minigame gives off is a pretty creepy one. I just think this is a pretty cool ending to follow the other post-night minigames, and it makes me feel really legitimately uncomfortable, which I'd say is a impressive thing to do, given that it's just an 8-bit minigame. I don't know, I think it's disturbing, I think it's pretty scary, it's pretty shocking, the initial bite. And I think it's a pretty damn good minigame and a pretty damn good ending. I think this is the point in the video where the endings start to get really good. The post-Night 6 ending of FNAF 4 was also in my top 5 FNAF minigames, not that you would have known that since that video flopped, so it's not a surprise that it's high on this list as well. I know some of you might shun this minigame because of lines like, "I will put you back together," but I honestly adore nearly everything about this ending. I like that the older brother apologizes at the beginning. It's a nice look into the emotion of the characters, which is something this series just doesn't do enough. The monologue that is coming from someone is really well written, even if it's vague. I like the mysteriousness of it, and I like that it genuinely feels like someone talking. Nothing about it feels fake or forced. It's an honestly well-written speech that appeals to both emotion and secrecy. The way every plush fades as the text goes on is just such a nice touch, especially with the music. I can't play the music because it'll get this video claimed, but the piano music is so beautiful and gives the scene so much more feeling to it as the text goes by and the plushies fade. And the way it ends with the flat line after the Fredbear plush fades just hits so hard. I think this cutscene is amazing, and it almost feels cinematic with the way every element works off of each other beautifully. I love it. For the record, I'm including Henry's monologue as a part of the insanity ending. I don't care if that's unfair. This is my channel, bitch. Henry's monologue in the insanity ending is one of my favorite moments in all of FNAF because it is one of very few times that the emotion of a character is a focal point. Hearing Henry say that he's kept awake at night by the horrors of this situation and the monster that Afton has become is such a chilling and interesting moment. Then when the monologue is over, the actual conclusion triggers, and it goes back to FNAF 6's hilarious ways. This ending has a great monologue, and it also has the funniest cartoon in the game. This end scene is about how you found something that you shouldn't have, and you will now be known as insane, so Fazbear Entertainment cannot be held accountable for anything, because you are no longer a reliable narrator. It's really entertaining and works really well as an ending. But yeah, Henry's monologue is also just pretty well written, and I think the voice actor, although I think in this one in particular he's a little bit too monotone, it's a really good monologue, and then it's a really good, funny cartoon ending. I think everything about the insanity ending in Pizzeria Simulator is absolutely amazing. I've said this before, I think the pizza party ending in Help Wanted is one of the most chilling moments in all of FNAF, and it's executed perfectly. Once you beat the weird and trippy pizza party level, you are brought into a back room. There's pizza and cake and a couple of your best animatronic friends. Glitchtrap then appears in a full form and motions you to come towards him behind the curtain. When you follow him, the screen is black for a second, until you are suddenly holding a microphone. Freddy Fazbear is introduced to the stage, and the curtains in front of you open as the music starts. You can't move, you hear the music as Glitchtrap dances around to the song. You are a child that has been stuffed into a suit, and you now have to sing those same stupid songs, just like Phone Guy said in FNAF 1, until the end of time. It never ends. I think this is such a fucking brilliant ending. It's a great callback to the original games, and it's legitimately chilling coming from a first-person view. This is a great scene with so much payoff. It's absolutely terrifying the way it's presented. It's somewhat subtle, but you absolutely know what's going on. I just like this ending a lot because it feels like it's an actual scene out of a horror movie. The pacing of this and the presentation is excellent, and I'm honestly astounded by the quality of this ending. The Springtrap ending of Sister Location's Custom Night features some of the best dialogue and some of the best pacing in this series. This cutscene is one of the most exhilarating moments in Five Nights at Freddy's for me. Michael's monologue in this cutscene is really interesting and well written. The voice acting is also really good. Most of you likely know what was said in this ending. Michael says his name, which was a pretty big deal at the time, and addresses the person he's talking to as father. Then he says that he put her back together like he was asked to do. I can only assume this is in reference to Baby being Elizabeth, but this is a bit of a weird part. He then goes on to say that they didn't recognize him and thought he was his father. The reason I like this monologue so much is because it treats the people of this story like people on a more simplistic level. I like that the insanity ending focuses on the emotional side of the story, and I like that the post-Night 6 minigame in FNAF 4 has the older brother apologize to the crying child, But this cutscene is different in the sense that it isn't super based on hard emotions, and it is simply treating Michael like a human being. Michael speaks to his father, he makes simple small talk to himself like a struggling human being probably would. He implies that he and his father look alike, which is, you know, human-like. The problem I have with FNAF's story is that the human beings are more like props. They exist to continue the series, but the way they develop kind of sucks most of the time. This cutscene simply treats Michael like a human, and that makes it so much more engaging and interesting. This cutscene ends, of course, with Michael saying, "I'm going to come find you," twice, as Springtrap enters the frame. Again, I quite enjoy the mystery of FNAF and the story as a whole, but I really appreciate how explicit this cutscene is. We can confirm quite a few things with just this one cutscene. The protagonist of Sister Location's name is Michael. His father is the one that died within Springtrap. Michael is going to go looking for his father, and this did also 100% prove that Springtrap didn't die in the fire, because technically the newspaper is just an image, whereas this shows actual movement. Michael's monologue is also just so well written and enjoyable, and makes for a great scene. The music over it really complements Michael's voice, and the way it builds up to the final shot of Springtrap is legitimately great from both a storytelling standpoint and a genuine cinematic standpoint. There's no such thing as a perfect ending or a perfect cutscene, but my god, everything about the Springtrap ending in Sister Location Custom Night is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. The happiest day in FNAF 3 is my #1 minigame of all time, and now it's also my #2 ending of all time. The happiest day ending is such a perfect ending for this game, and I've said that although I'm glad FNAF 3 wasn't the last FNAF game, this ending would have been more than satisfactory. It takes so much to get this ending, and the payoff is so worth it. This ending is about setting the souls of the children that died to rest. All of these tortured souls that possess the animatronics are finally able to be at peace and move on. It's just a beautiful concept. I love that you play as the puppet. It's amazing for the final minigame, and you give cake to the final dead kid, Golden Freddy. The moment that the masks fall to the ground and the spirits fade is such a wonderful moment of this series. As I mentioned when covering the bad ending, the music is also amazing. I don't know what it is, but I adore it, and will continue to use it whenever I can. It's peaceful and eerie at the same time. It makes me both sad and happy, which is exactly how I'd describe this ending. It's so beautiful, but it's still so dark. It makes me happy because the game ends with the souls being freed, but it's still horribly sad because they're still dead children. It honestly makes you think about it a lot. The final screen is the same as the bad ending, except the lights are turned off. However, only 4 masks are there. There were 5 before. This is because Golden Freddy wasn't able to move on and rest. This is a part of the story that is still relevant to this day, and it's been there since FNAF 3. I love everything about this ending. It's adorable yet tragic, it's so enjoyable yet horrific. It's an absolutely amazing part of this franchise, and the second best ending to ever happen. Of course, my favorite ending is the official completion ending of Pizzeria Simulator. Never will there be, nor could there be, a better ending for Five Nights at Freddy's than this amazing scene. I can't even get into everything I love about this ending, and I have discussed it before, but I will absolutely cover as much as possible. Henry's monologue in this ending is outstanding. The vocal inflections of the voice actor and the writing of the monologue itself are amazing. I like everything about it. Henry cuts off Baby to say that they've been tricked into coming there. I think that's a really interesting setup for the entire concept of this game, and makes the ending for these characters so much more interesting. And I also think it makes for a good callback to the way Baby lured you in during Sister Location. Henry speaks directly to the animatronics to tell them to let go of the spirits as they do not belong to them. Separating the spirits from the robots is another example of treating the characters like people, and it makes for a really good line in this moment. He also tells them that there is peace for most of them, and I think that's a very nice addition. However, he does make it clear that one of them will not be at peace. The screen shows Afton as Henry says, "For one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend." I love that line so much. Henry then addresses his daughter, which is yet another one of my all-time favorite moments of this series. He apologizes for not being there the day she died, and acknowledges her giving nature. It's such a nice ending for Henry and the puppet because it's a nice goodbye, and also addresses the puppet's giving nature, which simply makes sense because of everything we see in FNAF 2. Henry also addresses the protagonist of the game earlier in the monologue, and that's why people think the protagonist is Michael Afton. Henry says that there was a plan to get his volunteer, meaning you, out of the building, but he knows that's not what you want. Henry knows that Michael wants to burn with the rest of them to end this saga. Henry also says that he's nearby and is staying close as well to burn with everyone else. This is such a terribly sad yet satisfying conclusion to the series, and it's the reason I think FNAF 6 would have been the perfect final game. It makes me feel so many emotions, and as someone that has been a part of this series since the first game in August 2014, I would be so surprised and happy with this game being the final ending. It used to bother me that this isn't the end of the series, but honestly, it is so magical that I'm more than capable of pretending it is, and being happy with it. It's so fantastic in basically every way. It's a perfect ending for Henry, Charlotte, Elizabeth, Michael, and William. It's a wonderful conclusion for this story, and I love it so much. That's why it's my #1 ending in all of Five Nights at Freddy's. Wow, that took a long time! I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe because this really did take a lot out of me. Let me know if there's any ideas you have for other rankings, whether it's for the games or individual parts of the series, or just let me know if you have any video ideas in general. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at I'mTheBaddest with the links in the description, as well as my second channel where I post clips from my streams and some other fun stuff. Thank you for watching once again. I will see you guys next time.